Quick aside, like I've learned a lot of interesting things listening to this podcast. One of the most surprising things I've learned is that people still play Smite.
I mean, yeah. It's on like season 8 now. It's been out for 10 years.
Yeah, no, that came out while I was in college, and I'm like...
Came out when I was in 7th grade.
Oh,
You know? That's when I started playing. I got a beta code.
I wither away in front of the microphone.
Hello, mortals, monsters, and myth lovers alike. You're listening to Podcast to Poseidon, where we explore ancient myths and their modern retellings for reading Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This is Chapter 12, Orpheus and Eurydice. I'm your co-host, on loan from the Hunters of Artemis, Darien Smartt. Joining me is my co-host and brother, hailing from Cabin 4, DJ.
How's everybody doing today? If you don't know, Cabin 4 is Demeter, goddess of summer and the harvest. It's pretty great. She's a little overbearing at times, but you get used to it. I got some pretty dope flowers to help me grow some more grapes for wine. Don't tell Dionysus, he gets mad at me for that.
That's overstepping bounds. Yeah, and in the Roman pantheon, she's Harvesta, isn't she, DJ?
Probably. I'm Greek. Do you think I keep track of the Roman side of things?
She's not. It's not. She's Sierra. It's a joke of when you got that question wrong in the bonus episode. Okay, So before we get started, let's make sure we have everything we need for this quest by swinging by the camp store real quick. Hey DJ, guess what I just found in our camp store?
What?
Our new patron!
Oh, heck yeah. What's their name?
Their name is Amanda Howard, and they are joining the team as a new camp counselor patron.
Let's go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amanda. We really appreciate your support.
We appreciate it.
All right, so DJ, this week we are continuing our streak of guest episodes, and we're joined by professional writer and alleged comedian Dylan Hunter.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, hey Dylan.
Tell our audience what cabin you're from.
I am from Greg's Shed. Greg being the custodian of Camp Half-Blood. I was just a kid who thought he was going to space camp. I'm a mere mortal. I saw a bus pull up and kids were talking about Apollo. I thought it was Apollo 13. Got on. Turns out, nope, just the real guy, Apollo. So they just kind of put me with the mortal janitor, Greg, and I hang out with him, and we play video games in the shed. Pretty okay.
Little surprised Chiron lets you in, but I mean, let's go.
Well, sorry you never go to space camp, but let's go.
Yeah, I know, that's a little rough.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry you can't have a phone, too. Like, that's a little... it's kind of uncomfortable at times. But,
yeah. I'm one of those guys, so I don't raise issue. I don't want to be a problem, so I'm just kind of there.
All right, so as I said, this week we are talking about the tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice, and usually I make DJ tell us about that myth, but Dylan, you're our guest. Why don't you go?
Alrighty. Yeah, so Orpheus and Eurydice, the classic love story turned tragedy. Essentially, you got your boy Orpheus, who's the classic guy who always brings his guitar to the party, and he's actually really good at playing it too, which is somehow more annoying.
Yeah, fair.
But he's real smooth, and he and this wood nymph named Eurydice fall in love, decide to get married. So far, so good. Mm-hmm. However, there's a snake at the venue.
Oh no, not a
worst
venue.
wedding venue ever. Yeah, and now it bit Eurydice, and she dies like on the spot. Mm-hmm. Everyone's real sad about it, especially Orpheus. So Orpheus is like, hell nah, I'm gonna get my girl back. Journeys all the way to the underworld, to Hades. Uses his mad guitar skills, or I guess I keep saying guitar, lyre in this case.
Yeah. I like picturing with a guitar better, though.
Yeah, to
mandolin.
To put, he would definitely know the mandolin. Yeah, he's that level of like, I learned this special guitar.
This really obscure guitar used in only the 1400s. Ooh.
Yeah, but he's
Yeah.
also really good at that too, and that's
Exactly.
ugh.
Yeah. So it's hard to be mad at him. But he plays so well that it kind of lulls Cerberus to sleep, so he can get in as a mortal. And he confronts the Lord of the Underworld, Hades himself, and Persephone. Plays real well for them. They're like, well, okay, we'll make an exception for Eurydice. We'll let you lead her back out of the underworld. One catch, though, don't turn around. You gotta lead the way. You gotta face forward. You can't turn back. You can't turn back and look at her, or
Gotta
the
have
deal's
blind
off.
trust in death.
Yep. And so he begins to lead Eurydice back out, taking the lead, and he's walking, and he's walking, and he's walking. Pets Cerberus on the way out,
Aw, of course.
allegedly.
Good point.
Allegedly.
And
No one knows.
might be adding that part myself. Almost gets to the exit, but that doubt creeps in. He's like, you know what? Maybe the ruler of the underworld, who is real stingy about letting human souls go, maybe he's not on the level with me with this whole lead your wife back out deal. So he turns around and sees that she is there, but she fades away and gets essentially dragged back to Hades because he broke his deal.
Follow directions. Just follow directions.
Yeah.
It's weird because Hades has never been known to break his fucking promises.
Exactly.
He's he's a man of business, honestly. And if there's one thing you can count on most of the time is the word of a man of a business.
Yeah.
Who has integrity. Some people don't. Some guys don't.
Orpheus couldn't live up to his end of the bargain.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's my rough understanding of the myth. Just sort of classic dude makes a whoopsie daisy and ruins an entire relationship. Tale as old as time.
Yeah, I mean that's basically it. Orpheus and Eurydice doesn't have as many dramatic variations in the retellings as you might find in other stories. That's usually Dylan, it's the basic formula. Girl meets boy, girl falls in love with boy, they get married, and she gets bit by a snake 6 minutes after the wedding. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a variation, reading over some synopses that I read that said that rather than doubt, it was Orpheus getting to the surface and excitedly turning around when he was in the sunlight, but Eurydice hadn't.
Wasn't.
Yeah, she had
which
that's
I
another
like
one.
that less because it feels like splitting hairs.
Yeah.
And also it also paints Orpheus in a more self-absorbed light, I think, where it's oh, cool, I'm safe. He's literally not putting himself in his wife's shoes, thinking how space works.
Yeah, exactly. There's another variation where as he's going, she keeps calling to him, and that's what makes him turn around. And I like that version the least because it makes it entirely Eurydice's fault.
Yeah, that kind of it's a lot harder to blame Orpheus on that.
Yeah, oh well, it's this woman. She got bit by a snake and then wouldn't shut up. You're better off. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, which is it's fascinating that her the structure around Eurydice's death is that she literally just got married, is walking through the meadows with her bridesmaids, and then gets bit by a viper and just dies. And that, in Greek mythology, feels like a punishment. Either she did something, or Orpheus did something, or someone was angry, the gods were... It feels like it should be divine punishment. It's not. It just happened. And
right.
it sucks. I mean,
unfortunate circumstances.
Early example of a woman's death propelling a male protagonist's plot forward, but...
Oh, no.
Here we are.
What a great leap forward in storytelling.
Yeah.
Hollywood really owes Homer for this one.
Well, actually, they would owe Virgil and Ovid for this one, the two Roman poets whose story, that's the best versions we have come from those two Roman poets. Because, as we talk about on the podcast, a lot of the best versions we have of Greek myths actually come from Romans. Yay,
gotcha.
Romans.
Yay, Rome. Thanks.
Woo, Roman.
Thanks for codifying stuff. Were they like the Disney reboot of Greek myth?
They
No.
definitely were for Medusa.
Yeah.
Like, so having like we're just
I
gonna
think
retell
for a
this
lot
myth,
of
the more
things,
popular
they were
version.
more along the lines of like the Final Fantasy VII remake of Greek, where it's more long and drawn out, but it just in greater detail and better.
Metamorphosis is definitely the Final Fantasy VII remake of ancient Greek. You're totally right.
Yeah, and I'm on board for this analogy. Just better graphics, cool combat.
It feels better to play, and listen to, and just it's just all there.
All the characters feel more in depth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean that's basically. There's not a lot to Orpheus and Eurydice outside of their own story. Like we don't really know a lot about her. Sometimes, like she's just like a maiden or a wood nymph, right?
Right.
As like Orpheus, I think the myths tend to say that he's the son of the muse Calliope, who is like the muse of great epic poems. His father is either just a Greek king or Apollo himself, which
Gotcha.
tracks.
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a fun myth. When I was trying to do video game research, there wasn't a lot of games that followed that kind of style. Where like, hey, I want to go save someone from the dead. There's a lot of games that you can, and like media that you can pinpoint where someone's grieving someone really close to them that died or something similar to that, but none where they actively try to work towards bringing that person back to life.
Right.
Interesting. I would think that would be something you'd see more. Because you see it a lot in like, there's a ton of retellings of like Orpheus and Eurydice just structurally in a bunch of different medium. And I will talk about those later. But I'm surprised it's not more in video games because it feels like the whole. Well, we're gonna actually. So let's circle back to that because I definitely want to talk about the core of like what makes the story there.
Yeah.
Before we venture on, I actually want to just shout out, as Dylan, you said, like Orpheus is the guy who comes to the party with his guitar, but he's so good that you want to complain and it's still annoying. But like,
yeah, you're not gonna interrupt
It's
him.
just our brother, isn't
I'm
it?
not gonna
It's just
stop. Yeah.
Johnny.
It's just Johnny.
You guys starting playing the drums on an acoustic guitar. I fucking shit's cool as hell.
Oh man, yeah.
But so Orpheus, it wasn't just like that. He wasn't just like a great musician. He was maybe second only to the gods.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the 3rd century Greek poet Apollonius of Rhodes, Orpheus ran with the Argonauts, which means he was buddies with like Jason and Hercules and shit. And he was basically the bard of this group in that when everyone was feeling super down, he would play those sweet, sweet jams and liven it up. Everyone's got like that spark of inspiration again.
Hell yeah.
And
Brad.
when they're sailing past the island of the Sirens, who are just doing their thing, and they're like, we gotta go to the island and crash our ship and all die, Orpheus starts playing his music, and it's so good, it actually drowns out the magical siren song, and they all survive.
I just imagine Jason and Hercules sitting around talking to each other about how much, like, Hera's kind of a bitch. And
Yeah,
then,
they would know!
Orpheus is just sitting there with, like, background music. And
Just for the
like,
mood.
just for the mood.
Like, oh, this is
Just
a great song.
jamming.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, dude, this is a great song. What's it called? It's called Ode to Hera, because it's me keeping her from killing you both right now.
It's drowning out you guys complaining about fucking Hera. Like, seriously, shut the fuck up. I don't want to die either. Like, I'm here for it. Hera's kind of a bitch, but like, you gotta keep that shit on the DL. Not when we're over the open seas, all right? Like, come on.
But yeah, but when you wonder, like, how did this mortal, maybe a demigod, depending
Demigod.
on...
I probably misspoke when I called him mortal before. Please don't.
Well, I mean,
the
come
demigods are
after
still
me.
mortal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did this, so not like mundane, but like, how did this dude manage to convince, like, con his way into the underworld and then convince Hades, known stickler for the rules, to bend the rules a little bit? It is because he was just that good at the mandolin.
Right.
well, I was gonna say he got Hades and Persephone's in the mood. And I was like, all right, it's been a while, so we'll give you this shot while we're busy.
Like, yeah, that'll get you out of here. Cool. Go.
Bye. Yeah, bye. Okay.
Leave. Go. Here's Eurydice. Don't turn around. Don't look back. I'm serious. Don't look back.
I was gonna bring this up as a question. Like, is there a stated reason why there's the don't look back rule? Like, is it Hades just feeling like he needs to put some sort of weird addendum on this?
Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it like, we haven't run get out of hell.exe for a long like normally the souls come in, they don't go back out. We haven't booted this program in a while. Shit gets wonky. Don't turn around, like that'll be too much on the processor. You'll crash the system. Like just you can't. This is how it works. You have to be facing forward.
It's probably a mix of both.
I mean, I definitely feel like it's the whole like, well, they're Greek gods, they're gonna make heroes jump through hoops. But I like the whole, well, we've never actually let this happen before, so like, you just go and she'll follow, and we'll just if nobody acknowledge what's happening, and it should be fine. But if you acknowledge it, then it doesn't work. So we're just
the equivalent of smile and wave. Just fucking keep going. Make sure that no one really notices, and just like act like you belong. Okay, act like you belong to leave.
Totally. Yeah, no, it seems like one of those that's weird hoops, but you can do a lot with it in terms of like what it means and what it signifies.
Yeah, I've never actually think about this myth. I've never thought about like why did Hades put that obstacle there? Because honestly, I did just take it at face value and like, yep, you have to do a thing to get what you want because you're a hero in a Greek myth. Sorry,
dude.
Pretty much.
There needs to be something, right?
Your sweet skills aren't quite good enough to just get you everything you want.
Yeah, and I think it's important because it puts the like tragedy on Orpheus. It's not like a failing like oh no, we couldn't jump over the pit or something. It's not for once my music playing isn't good enough. It's just I doubted like myself a little too hard. I needed to make sure she was there. And it's that like it's the same to me, it's like the same need that drove him to the underworld is also what is the undoing. Like this is someone who he loves so much that he would risk everything, play music for Cerberus, the whole 9 yards to see her. And so naturally the challenge of like, don't look at this person that you've literally gone to hell and back for is gonna be like I don't know if Hades meant it this way, but that's a really good gotcha for somebody that driven.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Especially because, like, as I said, when he was traveling with the Argonauts, Orpheus isn't like, he's not a Hercules, he's not a Jason, right? He's not like going out there and fighting everybody, and he's the bard.
Yeah.
And
he's like, here's some dope tunes.
He had, he had no idea that he'd be able to woo Cerberus with his music, or that he would just be able to play a song and get what he wanted. Because, like, he probably thought he was going to go down there and just die himself, really. Like, I don't think he went down there with a plan. And the fact that this just was working for him with his skills and with his ability. And as you said, like, in the end, it's his own personal shortcomings that causes the tragedy, that causes it not to work. And that is devastating. And that's probably one of the reasons why this is one of those myths that you see retold a lot. In different fashions, because, wow, it sucks. It's so sad.
Yeah. One observation I had about this is like I feel like the story and especially its end hits different for me now than it would have like just a year ago.
Really?
Like because with the global health crisis that we're all currently living through,
it's
like I double mask, I go to the grocery store, I religiously like scrub down the shopping cart with the antiseptic wipes they give you, and then like I'm jumping through all these hoops, and then like randomly as I'm going through the aisles, like picking up boxes of cereal and stuff, I get an itch on my nose, and without thinking I itch it, and it's like, oh no, like
cool, I did that thing. Damn it.
I've literally like gone through this hellscape, and then suddenly like I violated the entire premise of why I'm trying to do all this safety precautions because of one human like innocuous like
something that we've
lizard
been
brain
doing all
need.
of our fucking lives without any restriction. We're just like, oh, nose itch, hey.
Yeah. And so I think a year ago I would have read the story and been like, you know, oh, you had one job, Orpheus, like get it together. But now it's like I've been that dude, like I've colossally like put my own life and the lives of others at risk just by like putting my guard down for one moment and having like a very just human reaction to the world around me.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. It is it's a bummer when it's that basic human thing that is the failing, and it's not like, oh, you're Hubis, you thought you're just so great and so amazing, or like, oh, you thought you were like king of the world, and like, oh, these like bad traits that are often the downfall of like a hero or a person or a character. And it's like the basic thing that's like, yeah, but we all have that, not even as like something to be proud of or something to be ashamed of. It's just like, that's just a basic setting. It comes with the model.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because like there are tragedies like Macbeth or like Breaking Bad, where it's tragic, but like by the end of the story you're like, yeah, this guy deserves it. Like he's kind of getting what's coming to him. He didn't start out necessarily in the most like honest place to begin with, and he's done a lot of things that you can't walk back. It definitely hits differently when it's like, oh yeah, I could do that tomorrow, like make that same error of judgment without a whole like fall from grace.
Just like that 1 second. And I don't think it's interesting that I wonder why we don't see that, as maybe it's because it's not as like dramatic or like entertaining to see that like basic one moment of mistake that causes the downfall. I'm sure there's other places. I just can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Right. I mean, yeah, like if we're thinking about this in terms of like takeaways, I'm curious, what do you guys get from like the story of Orpheus? Like I'm not saying like the intended takeaway, not to like get into the heads of, ancient scholars, and knowing that this has gone through like many translations and stuff, but what's the enduring takeaway beyond just like, if you decide to deal with like quasi devil, probably hold up your end of the bargain.
Yeah, I don't actually know what the takeaway for that would be for me. I always heard him like, oh, it's just a fairy tale. I never actually related to it all too much, aside from like, the just innate things that we do without even thinking, I guess maybe sometimes your nature isn't the greatest fucking thing to listen to.
Oh, damn. Wow, DJ thinks in the dark. Okay.
Well, I mean, like, it goes with it's like a similar thing with like the scorpion and the toad,
Oh.
The toad, the scorpion goes up to the toad. It's like, hey, can you help me cross the river? It's like, no, you're just going to stab me when I get halfway through across the river and then like kill me. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that. And then halfway across the river, stabs him. It's like, why'd you do that? It's in my nature. I just stab, and then they both die. And I'm like, that's a horrible story. Yeah, the scorpion's dick. And then like, I heard a retelling of it where it's like, they get all the way across the river. It's like, oh, you didn't stab me. It's like, yeah, it may be in my nature to stab, but it's my choice to stab you or not. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
That's a better end to the story.
It's a better end to the story.
Still, it's not like sneezing. Like I have control. Don't just go like scorpions. Don't go around like stabbing their own like kids and whatever. Pretty sure they only use it in self-defense.
See, now I feel weird about talking about my interpretation of myth because the scorpion thing was too good. So
I'll do it.
All right.
No wrong answers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I've heard some of Darien's answers. They're kind of wrong.
Fight me. Oh. Hey, remember how the Oracle of Delphi possesses people and then sucks out their soul and turns them into a corpse and moves on to the next one like a parasite? Hey, remember that, DJ?
And I still firmly believe that. Come on, you can't tell me that that's not what's going on with the mummy in the start of the book.
But we've read the book, so we know what's going on with the mummy. So that's a wrong answer.
For longtime listeners who have Darien and DJ fight over obscure myth trivia, you can check that off on your bingo boxes now. If you have bingo, just shout bingo into the void. We cannot hear you, but appreciate it nonetheless.
It's a one-way medium, but yep. All right, so for me in like the Orpheus myth, I think to bring down the mood, it is the fact that there is no cheating death in any way. And the fact that the reason that is because unfortunately it is in the human nature to end.
Mm-hmm.
As
right.
I get that.
Like Eurydice like, the whole thing is Orpheus is trying to get her back, and he is able to do a lot of miraculous things. He actually gets to the underworld, not supposed to be able to do that. Gets past Cerberus, not supposed to be able to do that. Gets Hades and Persephone to agree to make a deal with him, not supposed to be able to do that. Gets all the way back out again, not supposed to be able to do that, but ultimately fails to actually get her back. The one who has actually died, the one he's actually lost. Because in his, like we were talking about, it's just like the innate human nature. He looks back. He doesn't trust. He gets too excited. Like, whatever the reason is, it's just that inherent part of being a human being is what causes him to fail. Because ultimately, no matter how hard we try, like, that end is always going to be there. We are going to die. We are going to lose someone. We are going to face this at some point, no matter what happens. And that's the tragedy of it. And that's what makes it sad, is because that was the inevitability. No matter how great you are, or kind, or special, or lucky, you are just human. And ultimately, you're going to have to face death, and you're going to lose to it.
Yep.
Damn.
I could agree to that.
Yeah, that
Cheers
was
to that.
You were nervous about following the scorpion thing? That was
Why?
Because the scorpion thing was fun.
That
They said it's not fun.
I mean, we're doing an episode about tragedy, right? I feel
Yeah,
like
okay. All right.
somebody had to bring down the mood eventually, right?
Fair. Okay, let's bring up the mood a little bit by talking about the different ways we being in human beings in general retell that Orpheus and Eurydice story. Let's start with, I want to talk a little bit about Percy Jackson, because what is interesting is, like, this is kind of the first time we're talking about, or the podcast, talking about, like, a myth or a character who we have not actually met in the books, right?
Ah.
Like, we don't ever...
I don't even think we ever meet him.
No,
like,
we never meet Orpheus or
any-
Eurydice, and they're only mentioned as in when Percy's like, I'm gonna go to the underworld to get my mom, or we have to go to the underworld to get the lightning bolt, and it's like, only like 3 people have ever gone to the underworld and come back. It's like Hercules, Orpheus, and Houdini. What? You're 12. You're gonna do that? But
Yes.
I decided that this gets to be an episode because, one, we never actually, like I said, we don't ever meet Orpheus or Eurydice. That never circles back. But also, Percy does that. He is going to the underworld, not because he cares about getting the lightning bolt back or stopping this war or anything like that. He is going because he's going to try to get his mom back. Because, oh, Dylan, have you ever read the Percy Jackson books?
I have not.
Cool. We should
They're
probably
wonderful
do
books.
one.
I highly recommend them.
Gotcha.
Fun.
Yep, I'm a fish out of water in this conversation.
And if a book recommendation is coming from me, means I really like the book.
Okay.
You have a podcast about these books. I hope you like them.
Gonna say.
I just don't do books all too often. Most
Yeah.
I read is webtoons.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat. Who reads anymore?
I just consume my media visually through games and movies.
Gotcha.
Well,
But-
we're not
Series
here.
every now and again.
But yeah, so I gather this old Percy guy goes and pulls an Orpheus, but I don't know if we want to spoil it or anything.
I mean,
but-
the first episode of the podcast was us talking about the whole book, so it's
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, at the beginning of the book, Percy's mom is killed by the Minotaur, basically, but she disappears into a glittery gold thing. Percy, when he has to go to the underworld to get back the lightning bolt, because I think Hades has stolen Zeus's lightning bolt,
The whole
doesn't
time
again.
it's like, I don't give a fuck about the lightning bolt. I want my mom back.
He's like, I'm
Right.
gonna go get my mom back because I know you can do that because I live in a Greek myth now, and that's an option to me.
Essentially, yeah.
Natural reaction, yeah.
Yep. So they go there. Hades does have his mom. He actually kidnapped her, took her the moment before she died because he thinks Percy has the Helm of Darkness that was also stolen from Hades. He's like, I'll give you your mom back if you give me my helm back. And Percy's like, I didn't even know about this shit when these things were stolen. Why does everybody
What are you
think
talking
it's me?
about? I don't have your helm. It's like, but you got the lightning bolt.
Yeah, lightning bolt.
And then the lightning bolt appears in his fucking backpack.
Ares is a bitch. Is the moral
Ares
of
is
that
an
story.
asshole, and he's like an asshole throughout the whole series, except for maybe like once or twice. He's actually kind of chill.
Okay, but when he's Mars, but that doesn't count.
No, I'm talking about when he was Ares.
Okay.
He was
Anyways,
actually pretty chill. Like, I mean, in front of Aphrodite, obviously, but like,
obviously.
but even still,
Right.
like he was pretty chill at that point. He's like, "Hey, kid, if you do anything like to annoy her, I will kill you." I'm like, oh, understandable.
Okay, that's a normal reaction to have. So you have Percy, who has journeyed all the way through the underworld with his friends, gone through the trials, gotten past Chiron, gotten past Cerberus, is now in front of Hades, and is ready to make a deal with him. And his mom is right there. He can see her. She's frozen in the moment when she was taken. And he's like, okay, I can give you the lightning bolt, but there's still going to be a war and there's still going to be chaos. And now I know what really happened. Like, I can save my mom right now, but I can't because I'm not done yet. I have to go actually solve the problem or there's going to be a war and everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't save his mom. He leaves the one person he loves most in the underworld and leaves because it's not like because he failed, not because he didn't take the deal, but because in that moment it was the only thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Because that's part of Percy.
Because Percy is the only true hero in any Greek myth. I mean, Percy and Annabeth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of our camp have
Well, I guess
friends.
the 7. Yeah, you know what, the 7. Let me
okay, so
correct.
But, so the reason I'm saying that this is Percy doing the Orpheus and Eurydice myth is because he goes to the underworld to rescue a person he loves and ultimately fails. Now, he fails by his own choice, but also it is Percy just responding to his own human nature of, I have to do the right thing. I have to go fight the god of war and get the helm back, and I have to get the lightning bolt back, and I can't just take my mom and run.
That's an optimistic thing to call human nature, but yeah. I'm with you.
Well, I mean,
when you're 12.
Yeah, no.
When you're 12 and you have optimism about the supreme beings in the sky and you're not quite jaded because they haven't used you into oblivion yet.
That's fair. No, it's a good call. 100%.
So that's why I'm saying we're talking about this now, and also I just really want to because it means I get to talk about like 2 of my favorite comic books, but we'll get to that later.
Ooh, okay.
But that's why I'm like, so this opens a door, which is what is the what is the Orpheus and Eurydice myth actually about? How do you change it? I guess it's really any retelling. How often do you how much can you change a story before you're not retelling that story anymore?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the ship of Theseus thing where it's like if you take one plank out of a ship and replace it with a new one and keep doing that like every day, at what point is it a new ship or is it always the same boat? I'm not a literary scholar or anything. I feel like the like tragedy needs to be there. Like, I mean, it's sad that Percy can't like bring his mom back in that moment, but it hits a little different for me because it's like that's his decision. He's making a moral choice. He's he has the trolley problem laid out in front of him, and he's choosing to pull the lever.
Essentially,
and just the stakes are different, right? For Orpheus, he's not gonna. Like, it's either he gets his wife back or he doesn't. There's not necessarily, like, other lives hanging in the balance. But I think it still kind of, like, rhymes, and that might be part of the reason why Orpheus isn't included in the books besides that one allusion to someone who's tried to, pull off essentially the same sort of Hades heist before.
Hades heist.
Yeah.
God, that would be a great 1-page RPG. I would play Hades heist.
Hades heist. John Harper, if you're listening, please write this 1-page RPG. Yeah, the thing is, like, if Orpheus got to talk to Percy, like, would that be an interesting thing, or would it overshadow his decision not to rescue his mom? Like, would it make it seem too much like he was just heeding some other person's warning rather than like making a moral decision himself?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I mean, when they're in the underworld, they don't really talk to anybody else. They don't talk to ghosts or interact with anybody. They just get to things, which like I appreciate in the terms of like story structure, because like this is the building tension. Like, we're in like the end game. We got to get to Hades. Like, any sort of diversion for the story would have been like weird. But I guess that would have been. It out. Yeah, because I guess that's a good point about the thing is like we don't get the heroes of like the Percy Jackson books don't ever really get to talk or interact with the heroes of Greek myth. They'll get to talk to the characters. We meet Hercules like one time for 6 minutes.
But like longer than 6 minutes, but he's still a dick.
Okay, well, yeah. But it's not like they don't get to call up like Orpheus or like the original Jason or like literally try to think of any female hero, and there's not like anathema. But so yeah, they don't get to talk to the heroes that were actually like them and in those situations. They get to talk to like the gods and the creatures and the monsters who put those heroes in those situations, but they have to navigate their own way through them.
Right.
But they have the benefit of knowing those stories.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, which, I mean, kind of getting back to the nature of this podcast you guys do, like, it is that spirit of, like, retelling stories that we already know, but, you know, kind of how would someone with, like, our perceptions and ideas of humanity and morality deal with similar circumstances. And you mentioned that the characters do know, though, like, there is, like, in-universe knowledge of, like, Greek myth.
Oh yeah, like Chiron, for sure. Like steals a history teacher's job and like spends the first part of the first book teaching Percy Greek mythology. Like,
That's
Percy
wild.
goes through these books knowing the most obscure Greek
under
myths.
the premise of Latin, mind
I
you.
love that. I love that.
Yeah, like he knows like, oh, they meet this one guy in LA who's like Procrusteus, and he like almost killed like Theseus or some Greek hero with like over hospitality, and he's like, okay, he's like stretching them out on beds because they don't fit quite right, and he's like, okay, he tricks the guy into getting on the bed and then cuts his head off because that's what Theseus did. So Percy knows to do that.
Right. That seems to me like a great metaphor for people writing these stories based off of Greek myth. It's like we know what's come before, we kind of know the story beats, we know these characters, but like it's time for our own spin with that knowledge. I don't know if you were saving this for later, but like Darien, you brought this up to me when we were talking about this episode. You mentioned like a 14th century monk who wrote like a happy ending to the story. So that it's either late 13th or early 14th century like medieval romantic poem called Sir Orfeo. And I learned about it while I was doing just research and reading stuff for my English class I'm currently in, which is like Beowulf Through the Age of Reason. And shockingly, I love it. I thought I was going to be really irritated. It's super fun. I'm in the right line of working. That's awesome.
Nice. So I'm reading through and it's talking about how like like they're during this romantic era, right, where they were writing these things. You see more like Lancelot, like Arthurian legends are being written in these things, like romantic poems. And so in the textbook I was reading, it has this throwaway line of like there was even a 14th century retelling of the Orpheus myth in which like called Sir Orfeo, in which they give Orpheus a happy ending. Or he succeeds in rescuing Eurydice, and my brain went, no, that's wrong. You can't do that. That's no. And I had to like stop. Like, why am I have a podcast where I talk about how we retell stories and like, that why it's important.
I was about to say, I'm like,
so I was like, why was I so very much like, no? If he succeeds, it's not that story anymore. So I was like, I really wanted to like for this episode when I was talking to you about it, I really wanted to boil down like, what is it about a story that makes it that story? But then I actually went and did research on the Sir Orfeo poem. And I would like to talk to whoever wrote the textbook and just maybe slap him in the face a little bit. Because, hey, Sir Orfeo is not giving Orpheus and Eurydice a happy ending. It is taking a ancient Greek myth and combining it with Celtic folklore of the time.
I'm into that. That's sick as fuck.
Okay, yeah, let's
go. That sounds dope, dude. I gotta read this.
Well, it would be really hard to read because it's written in like 14th century English.
Dude,
but
I don't care. I'd still fucking read it. I read Sir Gawain. That shit was a slog.
Okay, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is actually great, and you shut your whore mouth.
It was fun, sure, but I was like, man, this is boring. I'm very much more of an action guy. And while I did enjoy the lessons that it had to offer and what it was about, I'm like, man, I kind of want King Arthur to come in and start just like just vibing, you know?
He's at Camelot.
John Wick, yeah.
He's at Camelot.
Okay. So basically, in Sir Orfeo, he is a king, just a generic King Arthur type king of wherever, and his queen is kidnapped by a fairy king while she's sleeping in an orchard and taken to fairyland. Yeah, right.
Fuck him.
As the Fae's gonna do.
Fucking Oberon. Can you like imagine? Like, come on.
What a dick. So he takes her, the fairy king takes her to fairyland. And and Orfeo's like, okay, I have to go get my wife who was kidnapped by the Fae. So he goes into fairyland, he travels through, has fairyland adventures, it's a poem, and then gets to the fairy king's castle, and then plays like mad. He just plays music for the fairy king, and it's so good. The fairy king's like, damn, like you're the first person to ever come to my castle uninvited, but those were some sweet, sweet jams, so I will give you any reward you want. And he's like, I want my wife back. The fairy king's like, damn, oh, you got me there, okay. So they go home, and then there's some little other things happen, but that's basically it. And then everybody's so glad to have their king and queen back because it's the 14th century England, and you better love the monarchy or else.
Yes, naturally.
So that's not what I would say. Like, as I said, like that's not giving Orpheus
kind of a different story.
It's a retelling. It's totally different. It's not just like some poet was like, I don't like that he failed, so he succeeded. Like they took, they do what we do now, what storytellers have done with these Greek myths forever, is that you took that myth and you combined it with the way you are telling stories in that moment. They were using Celtic folklore, like the fairyland, the fairy king, like that kind of stuff was present at the time. Like you will find a lot of early, like proto King Arthur stories was basically about Arthur going into fairyland to rescue people. Like that's what Celtic kings did.
Because fairies were dead.
That's what they're fae. They're going to do what they do.
Yeah.
So. And I really...
Don't ever give them your name.
Never give them your name.
Mm-hmm.
That's rule 1. So it was... And like I said, like I was really confused when I actually read like about this myth and realized what it was. Like why it would be described as you gave Orpheus and Eurydice a happy ending. Because I said like that's not it. It's like Eurydice in the Greek myth, she died... of a viper bite, and it was sad and it was tragic, but she died, and that's kind of the natural thing that happens.
Right.
The queen was kidnapped by a fairy king.
Yeah.
Even if you have fairies running around, that's not a natural fate for someone to have. So, of course, Sir Orfeo is going to be able to rescue her. He's not overturning any status quo. He's doing what Celtic kings did. Of course, Orpheus is going to fail to rescue Eurydice because you can't bring someone back from the dead.
Right. No, it's true. Once you take death out of the equation, that sort of
changes.
Moral, philosophical, whatever you want to call it, undertone of like, death is permanent, even for like demigods and wood nymphs. Yeah, you lose that. That is interesting because when you first told me about this, I was kind of enamored by the idea of just like some dude writing fanfic in the 14th century being like, no, I don't like that ending. I want my special guitar boy to live happily ever after. But it is like, yeah. I mean, it is still interesting that like it's using essentially the same characters, but to tell a like not a tragedy, but an adventure.
Yeah.
Sort of tale, sort of like a very modern twist on like an old IP. But like, at that point, it is weird to say that they are telling the same story. Maybe it's like a similar inciting incident, but but very, very different purpose.
And so you would still say, like, I would say, like, yes, this is an Orpheus and Eurydice retelling. I wouldn't say, but Orpheus, but it's happily ever after because I think what I was like, oh, these are totally different characters. Like, they're the same, but like, he's king now, and it's fairyland, and she didn't get bit by a snake; she got kidnapped. Like, so it's like how in like Percy, he's like, his mom didn't really die, but he still went to the underworld to get her. So it's a retelling, but it doesn't feel like I don't know what. I thought it was really I was actually like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I really like that. I really like that. Like, oh, this is what the podcast is about. It's about when we take myths and when we retell them, we're not just like, oh, I want my special guitar boy to have his wife back at the end. And that's just what I'm going to change. It's like, no, we blend it with the way you tell stories now and what you're trying to say. And it's like what it's saying about like, this one's like, fighting stuff, being the king, being the leader, like those kind of things, like what a good king would do, like chivalry and all that kind of heroics of the era.
Right.
Like that's what that story was telling. Very different than what Orpheus and Eurydice was doing in ancient Greece.
Oh yeah.
Right. No, it's definitely like we can't separate ourselves from the cultural environment in which we live. We're always going to see things through multiple lenses of our own experience. Like the story that I'm most familiar with, like the form of it that I'm most familiar with is Hadestown.
Hot damn, let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going to be eventually brought up.
Last time I mentioned it to you, Darien, you hadn't listened to it yet, and are you still trying to hold out to see a show once everything calms back down in the world? Because I don't want to spoil things.
No. Go ahead. We were talking about this in the podcast. Let's go. Let's talk about it. Okay. I will see it, and it'll I know what happens. It's like it's Orpheus and Eurydice.
No, it's true. Yeah,
let's talk about it. So
yeah,
it's not gonna be so Orfeo. I get it. But no, I still
right.
Thank you for asking. Please tell us your insight. Tell us your thoughts.
Oh well, yeah. I was just gonna say, like the same way that this, Celtic blending of like medieval European values of chivalry and what makes a good king blended their way into that story. Anise Mitchell's retelling of this classic story is very much about like the dehumanizing nature of capitalism and like environmental destruction is like a huge theme in the story. And it's like, while it is almost like beat for beat the same story in terms of like how things play out for Orpheus, it puts a lot of weight on like supporting characters, kind of imagines what like the other spirits in the underworld would be like if they saw this guy who was going to get his wife out. Does some really interesting things with like the motivations behind Hades himself, and it's just like it's an old story, but it has a lot to say about the here and now.
Yeah. The music's just fabulous. It's just fucking great.
It's a great...
I believe it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to go see it once everything clears out.
But the like literally like the opening song, Road to Hell, which is sung by Hermes, who is like the sort of narrator / guide, fittingly, for this whole story. Like the song addresses this sort of conversation directly, where it's like, don't ask where, don't ask when. It's an old story and we're going to tell it again. Like, just straight up saying like, yes, you know this story, but we keep on revisiting it. And there's like multiple points in the show where they kind of acknowledge the timelessness and the importance of telling sad songs or sad stories. It's, the reason why we listen to blues and stuff. It's like sometimes you need those sad stories of human failings in your life.
Yeah.
DJ, did you have any Orpheus or Eurydice retellings that you're familiar with? I know you mentioned video game a little bit.
The only one that I could find that I'm currently playing through that I really do need to finish, I tried to finish before this podcast, but I got tired. I got sleepy, is Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. And it starts off like real strong and unsettling. For those of you who haven't played it, I'm only like 2 or 3 hours into it, and it's really good so far. It's about Senua, and obviously she's going to, and this is a Norse retelling of it, so she's going to Helheim to get her loved one back. They weren't quite married yet, but like we hear her thoughts a lot of the times, like I wanted to marry you. Yeah, right. Well, the Northwind got there early. We get to see how this guy was done away with.
Oh,
holy fuck!
Like that. Oh no!
I can't remember what the specific tactic was called, but I think it's called like the Blood Eagle.
Don't like it.
Oh no, I know. We're good. We can just
it's great. Yeah. We get to see him strung up like that, but like the whole time she's got his like when we see that. This is only like 2 hours in the game, I guess. Also, spoilers for Senua's Sacrifice. But
everything we talk about is listed in the comments or in the episode description. If you,
I'm just making sure.
No, I'm not talking to you, DJ. I know you know. I'm letting our listeners know. So if anybody's upset about spoilers, always check the description before the beginning of the episode. I will give you a heads up about anything we talk about, so you know when to start skipping when we start talking. JJ, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Please continue.
Oh, you're fine. this is like 2 hours into the game, and we're like, and you already know the guy's dead, right? Like, because it's like, go to Helheim, get your loved one back, and the whole time she's got the guy's head in a little bag as she's carrying around, because the head is the like basket for the soul or something like that. They used a different word. It's not basket, but something like that. And it's the closer you get to Helheim, like at the start, she like pulls up the head, and it's like breathing. You can see it like just breathing through the cloth, and like it's sinking into the eyes and mouth and coming out. It's a very unsettling game.
You don't say.
But I'm very excited about it. And so, oh dude, Hell also, Hella, she is horrifying in that game.
Yes.
Horrifying. I've seen a lot, obviously, like we get to see a lot of retellings of what Hella would look like in Smite. She flips between like a really corrupt and like a good version of herself, and like she's got a really cool mechanic. And then we see her in like the Marvel movies and comics and shit like that, and she's just like fucking Loki but girl.
Not wrong, but go on.
In this one, giantess, fucking bald-headed, half decaying corpse, half normal body. Yeah. And I was horrified when I saw her.
Yeah.
Damn.
I was like, this is the scariest fucking thing I've seen in any game I've ever played.
Woof.
And then like she knocked me off the bridge to Helheim, and then I went falling into an abyss. Another thing that like Orpheus shows up in, they don't retell his myth, is Hades, the hit roguelike game. Yeah, obviously I'm going to bring up Hades when he is prominent. So we see him at the start, and he's very sad, obviously, because he doesn't have his muse, Eurydice, and Hades is himself. He's getting mad. He's like, dude, there's no point. Like, I have you here in my courtroom to play music, and if you don't want to play, then I have no use for you. So if you don't start playing soon, you will be sent into the fields of Asphodel. I'm like, fuck, okay. And so, like, and then, like, instead of him playing, you get a magic music stand that you can just listen to the game's soundtrack in. It's pretty cool, actually. And then, like...
so if he's there, I assume you meet Eurydice at some point, yeah?
Yes. She's actually... there are 3 different kind of NPCs that you meet in... Like, when playing through it, like, and it's just random chance, obviously. It's Sisyphus, Eurydice, and then, like, one warrior guy I always forget. He's in... he's in Elysium. I hardly run into him because I barely get to Elysium sometimes because I'm trying out new builds, you know? Okay. Sisyphus is cool. He gives you, like, the consumable stuff, like darkness and shit like that. Like, money, darkness, and a key of sorts, or like you get to choose between those 3. And then Eurydice upgrades your boons, but it's really cool because there's like obviously an ongoing narrative between the 2. You talk to Orpheus and he's like, oh, I'm just so sad and lost without my muse Eurydice, and you go to Eurydice and he's like, that guy's such a bitch.
I was gonna say
pretty much like he turned around and like fucking left me here to die, pretty much. Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
And then like eventually she starts like soften up because like it just like goes back and forth. Like, there's a lot more to it, and she's like, oh, I mean, I guess I do miss him a little bit, and like he is also like, and he starts like get a little more joyful because you're just running messages between the 2.
Oh, I love that.
It's really sweet. And then like eventually he does start playing, and when you show up, I can't remember what the song is called, but Eurydice is singing a song. And it's on Spotify, and it's a beautiful song. It's a great ballad, and I fucking love hearing it every time. And after, what is it? She tells you the song, and then you tell it to Orpheus, and he's like, oh, I remember that song. Yeah. And so he starts playing it in the courtroom, and now they're just both playing it, even though they can never see each other. And it's really sweet. Eurydice is also like a little mad at him because it's like, dude stole all my shit. It says I'm a muse. I was really writing his shit. I'm like, oh man.
Ooh, that's a different angle.
That's a whole other angle. Yeah. I'm like, whoa. It was great.
Dang.
I would like to talk about another, if we don't mind, Orpheus and Eurydice retelling that is very, very Norse. If you guys would indulge me in letting me talk about comic books. I want to talk about one of my favorite short miniseries, Angela, Queen of Hell. This is a Marvel comic written by Marguerite Bennett. It is, for real quick context, it is about a character. Her name is Angela. She is Thor's long-lost sister. There is more there, but I'm just going to spark notes past that because I could talk about her forever. She's badass. She goes to Hell, 1L, to rescue her girlfriend, Sarah, who has died. And when... Oh, I have to actually give a little bit more context. This is going to be important. Okay, so Angela is the long-lost daughter of Odin and Freya, who was murdered when she was an infant by an invading force from the 10th realm, and they're called the Angels. Odin was so angry that his daughter was killed that he locked the angels away in the hidden 10th realm, so that's why there are only 9 realms. Freya was so angry that her daughter was killed that she went to Hell and told Hela that whenever an angel dies, their soul comes to Hell and they are the slaves of Hell. Oof. We find out later that the baby Asgardian princess did not die. Was stabbed, but she's an Asgardian, so they're tough even though when they're 9 weeks old. Survived, was raised in secret, is now one of the badass assassin bounty hunters of the 10th realm. She finds out that's relevant. So she goes, her girlfriend, Sarah, who is a trans woman, which I mentioned because representation, because Sarah is a badass and is a bard and breaks the fourth wall when she feels like it. So she's one of my favorite characters that is so underutilized in comics. Nice. It's so sad. I'm going to take a breath and slow down because I'm too excited. Talking too fast.
I need to read this.
It's fucking great. There's only like 5 issues, but that was supposed to be. It was a short run, 5 or 6.
Gotcha.
So she finds out, because the angels don't know that when they die, they go to Hell. They don't think they have souls. They think they just disappear into the ether. She finds out Sarah is there. Well, let's go get her back. And that's what Angela does. She goes into like the Marvel Norse comic of Hell and goes and kicks ass and fights monsters and gets Sarah back. But what's great is that when she finds Sarah in roughly the midpoint of the comic, Sarah's pissed at her because it's Angela's fault that she died. And
oh, shit.
Yeah, so the comic isn't so much about this woman going and getting her lover back. It's kind of about what we owe the people who we are in relationships with. It's about how to find that balance in the relationship because she and Sarah fight because it's a comic book and every problem is solved by a badass fight scene.
Definitely.
But eventually they come to terms, they resolve, they make it up. And Sarah's like, okay, babe, let's go. But let's write a different kind of song. Let's not write a love song. Let's write a fight song. Because now it's not just Orpheus going to get Eurydice and then leading her out. It's Orpheus fighting Eurydice and then teaming up to get out of the underworld together. And
yeah.
That's what Angela and Sarah do. They go, they find other angels who have been fallen. They find other people in Hell. And she goes, with Sarah's help, Angela goes and fights Hela and she wins. And I guess, as I said, spoilers, she becomes Queen of Hell. That's why the comic is called Angela, Queen of Hell. And she sits on the first issue, which I will show you guys because I have it right here. It's just so stunning and badass. And I love this. I love the panels. The panels in this are gorgeous. It's some of the most beautiful. Like, this is where she finds Sarah and she reaches through the bars and kind of chokes her out because she's pissed. I didn't notice that she was dead for a while. To be fair, Malekith the Dark Elf was pretending to be Sarah, but she's also kind of pissed that she didn't know that Angela didn't notice that wasn't her.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
So when Angela becomes Queen of Hell, she makes 2 declarations. One, Sarah gets to come back to Earth, or to the world of the living. And 2, the angels are no longer slaves. And then she takes off the crown and is done. Because the story is not about her becoming queen. It's not becoming about more powerful. It's really not even about the badass fight scenes. It's about trying to come to the same place in your relationship again. They were separated, by death, but by a lot of other factors that even when you see the flashbacks of their relationship, Angela was never really letting Sarah in. They were never really talking. She was never opening up and letting her into her heart as much because she was afraid of losing her. And then she did. And now it's her going in being okay, I could lose you again, but even if that happens, I felt what that's like, and that sucks. I'm willing to go through all of that again to have you back. I'm willing to risk that again if I can have you back, and us, we can be in this relationship and we can be together and actually make this work. And then they go have a little brownstone in Brooklyn, and it's great. And then never use Sarah again.
Because That's aw.
Because it happened.
Comic book. I don't think she died. It just you see Angela do other things, and Sarah's not there because another writer picked up the book and just wasn't interested in using Sarah. It's fine. I love reading comics. Anyway, so that's really interesting. Where I view this as like, oh yeah, this is an Orpheus and Eurydice retelling, and it's badass, and I love it, and she wins. But then I read about that description of Sir Orfeo, and I was like, Orpheus can't win. That doesn't count. That's not a real thing. It's not just Orpheus rolling up. It's Angela. She's different. It's Sarah. She's not Eurydice. It's Norse. It's comic. It's taking that Greek. It's like taking it and combining it with Celtic folklore. It's taking it and combining it with like that Marvel Norse pantheon. It's a comic book. It's an American comic book.
Right.
And what are we trying to say here? And it's don't fuck with badass women, basically.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, there's also like people smarter than me have pointed out how a lot of American like comics and cartoons deal with like, you know, the individual persevering over like overwhelming odds and stuff, and that's like a big part of like the mythos here in the United States. So like, yeah, I don't know if a tragedy that plays out beat for beat the same way that Orpheus's does would like work in especially like a Marvel setting, because it's like kind of this dour note of the things that made Orpheus an individual is kind of what got his wife restranded in the underworld.
Yeah. And like maybe if Orpheus had been able to have Eurydice's help, or knowing that he wasn't alone, he wouldn't have looked back, or he wouldn't have gotten too excited. He would have trusted her to be there. Because that's what Sarah is for Angela. Like Angela can't do all that alone. Sarah, like it's literally them working together and being each other's strength and covering for each other's weaknesses is what gets them through it to the end.
Right. Having the like love interest have something to say makes those stories way more deeper. Interesting.
Yeah.
As I'm not familiar with this comic book series. I want to be now.
It's so good.
I'm gonna look it up afterwards. I have seen some of the stuff with Orpheus and Eurydice in Hades. And I just wanted to briefly revisit that because I think it is a great choice to have Eurydice be rightfully pissed.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a similar angle in this Queen of Hell series too. And like have that be the like emotional obstacle to be actually faced. It's not the Lord of the Underworld. It's not all of the dangers of hell or Hades. It's you let someone you love down, and that is an existential terror beyond any mortal kin. Like it sucks. And from the Hades side of things, there's the video game. Like Eurydice's whole thing is kind of like, I don't care what his intentions were, his actions hurt me, which is like a very important kind of like read of the, you know, thing. Like, sure, we can talk about how tragic it is that he meant well. At the end of the day, like he doomed his wife to being in this underworld forever just because he had a moment of weakness, and like
she paid the price.
We can't exactly like it's sad that he like wandered the earth writing sad love poetry for however long he lived after that, but
he soon did get ripped apart by the followers of Dionysus.
I was gonna say he gets brutally murdered by, I think, wasn't it like women who are pissed that he like wasn't sleeping with them or something?
It depends on like who gets to tell the story. It's generally like the meanies, the Meads. They're Dionysus. They tend to be frenzied because it's Dionysus and debauchery. So
right.
I'm pretty sure it's because he was, bringing down the mood with his death for cutie jams.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, for once, the guy at the party with the guitar gets shot down by.
Rightfully, someone tells him to shut up.
Yeah, we want to listen to Skrillex. Like, get that out of here.
We made a playlist. Okay, I spent 2 days building this playlist. I didn't ask you to bring your mandolin, Orpheus.
That's my headcanon now. Listen, I'm on a lot of ecstasy right now. You can't be playing that sad shit, or I'm gonna
you understand
go
what
to
I'm
a bad place.
I'm gonna get a fucking bad trip going real quick.
Yeah.
And I guess even like circling back like to Orpheus, like after he gets ripped apart, you think, oh, but he died. He got to be with Eurydice. No, his head was still alive in a lot of like the versions.
Oh no!
And he's still singing and just floats down the river to Lesbos, and they find his head. And in addition to singing, now he's doing prophecies. So they build a temple.
Huh?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
That's
so
not a direction I would envision for the character, but that's some weird like extended universe shit at that point.
Someone else definitely added this later.
Yeah.
Was it Ovid? I think it was Ovid.
Yeah, probably.
You know who we should bring back?
Yeah, it's like we haven't seen Orpheus in a while.
Yeah. Fan service.
Yeah, it's okay. In the Sandman comics, Neil Gaiman takes that and like runs with it. And it's very cool. Yeah, I guess I'm going to talk about comics one more time. So in the comics, Orpheus, his mother is still the muse. His father is Orpheus, who is Dream of the Endless, of the Sandman, whole thing. So after Eurydice dies, the reason he is able to even go into the underworld and come back is because in the Sandman comics, Dream's sister is Death. So Orpheus's aunt is Death, and he goes to her and is like, hey, I want to get to the underworld. How do I do that? And she's like, all right, my dude, if you go to the underworld and you come back, you never get to go back there. You will never die. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. I just want to get Eurydice. So he goes down there and then fails and then gets ripped apart, but he doesn't die because that was their bargain. You will never die. So that's why his head survived, is that just never died. Just kept sitting there.
Read the fine print.
Read the fine dude. He was like, I'll take that bet. Maybe not a good
regret.
So, yeah.
That kind of gets to this idea of like why it seems like so many modern retellings of Orpheus goes off the rails at the point of the ending. There's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of these stories where the ending isn't tragic, or at least not tragic in the same way, doesn't necessarily have the same takeaway. Like, I don't know if that's our culture needing triumphant stories, us being kind of told to expect that, or what have you. I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, I was looking up like what are some other Orpheus and Eurydice retellings, and there's like tons and tons of like books, tons and tons of like YA books that take that premise. But obviously it's not like them going to the underworld to get them back. Like usually it's like about like real life teenagers who have been put in a terrible situation, trying to overcome it through the love of the other people that they've met, and trying to find strength in themselves to save someone they care about from some terrible fates.
Right.
And I like, because I was reading, I like that maybe that's the takeaway from the Orpheus myth.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's still, even when I said earlier, where my takeaway from the myth is like death is inevitable and it's in our human nature, we can't overcome it, but it's still incredible that he got down there. It's still incredible that he got past Cerberus. It's still incredible that he got Persephone and Hades to let him try. Like, there isn't like strength in human spirit and ambition to do the incredible thing. And even if he failed, and and Eurydice is the one that paid the price, but to be fair, like, she was already dead. Like,
yeah, no, it's true.
Put her in a worse situation, and she's still there. And in Percy Jackson mythos, eventually when Orpheus does die, he and Eurydice are reunited in Elysium, which means she's just been in Elysium, which is the place you want to go. So
I mean, she was a wood nymph.
Does that like give you a pass to?
I think Hades is just trying to please Demeter and Persephone.
Yeah, I mean, because like satyrs and wood nymphs in Percy Jackson, they don't go to the underworld. They don't get reborn. They'll just be reborn as like a plant or something. Like Grover, the satyr, who's Percy's best friend, mentions like, oh, if I die, I'll just come back as like a dandelion or something. Like, it's fine.
Could you imagine if Orpheus got all the way down to Hades himself, and only for him to be like, dude, she's not here. Like, she's a dandelion back up on the surface.
Confused. I'm like,
good news, your wife is alive. Bad news, she's a houseplant.
Good news, lovely houseplant though, and the person that has her is like really good at taking care of plants. So.
Yeah, good news, here are her coordinates, And Orpheus like, what the fuck are coordinates?
Yeah, you got Google Maps on up there yet?
No,
We
dude,
use the Google Maps down here.
it's the early 5000s. Like, come on.
Oh, you guys, okay, just wait a couple thousand years, it'll be fine.
Okay, that's super fucking funny because in the Sandman comics, when Orpheus goes to see Death, he like steps into her realm and it's like her Brooklyn apartment because most of the comic is set in the 80s. And he's like, what is this strange? She got like her TV and she's like, what is this strange place? And she shows up and she's like in like the tank top and the black jeans she usually wears. She's like, shit, Orpheus, hi. Oh, this is weird for you. Okay, hold on. And then she changes it all to be like spooky Greek temple and she's in like, she's like, hi, nephew.
Right.
How are you? Right. This.
Yeah, what do you want?
So,
Pardon my mess.
yeah, it's like, hi, what's up? So I do like the idea of like immortals or like exist outside the step where they're just going to be in whatever time that they want. And then the poor mortals have to just deal with that shit.
They're like, non-linear in existence. Yeah, no, I love that.
It's always a fun.
But like, yeah, because it's interesting that like we're talking about a lot of modern retellings where they take what like many would fairly consider to be like the defining like beat of that tragic myth, which is the tragic end, and deviate from it in a lot of ways. I don't know. What's like your read on that?
I think it's like when I was like just reading first introduced to like the Sir Orfeo myth where it's like, and they gave him a happy ending. And I was like, what? Just reeled back instead of like, no, hell no. While simultaneously Angela, Queen of Hell, is an Orpheus retelling, is a happy ending, and I love it. So I was like, what? But then when I actually went and read the story of the actual Sir Orfeo poem, I was like, this is not just straight Orpheus and Eurydice. It is combined, as I said, that classical myth with the Celtic folklore, and you made something new to say what you want to say, which is relevant to your point in time. And so that's what I think is the nature of like retelling those kind of stories, is that you're not retelling just to like parrot back that thing again, and you're not changing things just because I want it to end like this because I think it's nicer. It's like when you make those changes, they usually come with the medium.
A caveat.
It's a video game now. We're in Hades. It's the comic. It's Hadestown, where she doesn't really die. She's put in like the town and stuff, but it is and it's not. And then there's all that, like, the blues and jazz. And so even when things are like different, even if it's either going to be the same, a la Hadestown still is a tragedy, or Angela, Queen of Hell, which is like a success story, which is the fight song, they're still using that formula, and the changes that are made or not made are building to whatever this new blending is, right? Like, Orpheus and Sir Orfeo is not dealing with death. He is dealing with the Celtic concept of the fairyland. So obviously he will win, because in fairyland, you can get her back. You can't get her back from death. In the comic, you're a comic book hero. You're going to go get your girlfriend back from hell. You can win, but only if you are the one in power. Now, you have to be Queen of Hell. You can't just take her back. You have to do something. And that is the formula of the comic book. That's like, if you want to instigate change, you have to have the authority to do that. Comic book. In Hadestown, it's he fails at the end, but that's I'm having a hard time to articulate because now it's a musical, right? Now you have Hermes singing, you have the fates there, you have like it's predestined. Some things are going to happen. It
leverages that, like, this is a known quantity you're dealing with. But it's interesting when those sorts of stories still have an impact on you. Like King Lear and Hamlet and stuff gets put on like every year across theaters around the world, and people still go see it. There's not this sense of like, oh, I had that spoiled for me. Like, I know how it's gonna go. Like, you still go watch it because it's interesting to see the same language, the same characters, and slightly different settings, or or seeing how those ideas from way back when hit now, and what they mean to us today. I think Hadestown is just brilliant in the sense that Hades is this like stone cold capitalist, and quote unquote death is just, being a like minimum wage worker in essentially like a coal mine, just like having signed your life away. And for me, the takeaway with that tragic end is like, I think it's the Fates or somebody sings near the end about like we celebrate something like the birds who sing at night rather than the ones that sing during the day, like those that still find hope and still try to change things even when it seems like the world is against them and they're literally going through hell. Those are the sorts of people whose stories we should celebrate and keep their stories alive, because sure, he didn't do it this time, but maybe the next time it will turn out good. Like,
yeah, and that would be,
there's that temptation that he got so close.
Yeah,
he could have done it. That puts a like, it's tragic, but also gives you this feeling of like, okay, like next time.
Yeah. There's always the next time. Yeah. And I would say like that was probably the difference that the Hadestown brings that the Orpheus and Eurydice myth doesn't. Because like that's not probably like the Greeks like, oh, next time. It's like, no, Orpheus is sad and then he got torn apart and now he's just ahead. Like there is no next time.
Yeah.
He failed, fuck you. But, like, hey, birds that sing
right. And
there's always tomorrow.
Right. Especially with, again, it's sort of like I think it's a pretty good read of the original myth of being about the finality of death, and just not being able to overcome and the need to let go and not turn around and expect to find your love next to you. With Hadestown, it's more about like, it's interesting to take death and parallel it with like being under like oppressive economic conditions, because it is something that like in our day and age feels just as a part of the natural world as death almost. It's just like an inescapable fact of life for so many. But ending on the same note of like, this is natural, I don't think would be true to the vision of the author, and would also be like a way, way darker note to end on.
Not as fun.
Somehow.
In
like
Broadway musical.
Yeah, everyone dies is like a dour note, but it's something that's useful that will help you through the rest of your life, because it's like loss is something that we all eventually, it's the great equalizer of humanity. We all have to deal with that. Both with our own mortality and that of those we love. We can't be elves and just be above all that. Having that same message with like soul-crushing capitalism is just
not as good.
Like it hasn't always been this way. It doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
So having that note at the end of being like, we need Orpheuses who try to do the impossible and try to leverage their talents and their voice to save people from dire circumstances. Even when they fail, it's still worth telling their story. As you said, like he failed this time, but wow, he got so close. And like to tie it back to what we're talking about, like how in the Percy Jackson books, like they know the Greek stories. So Percy went there knowing Orpheus got so close and I can learn from his mistakes. And maybe this time, because the deal is if he gives Hades the helm, he gets his mom back. He leaves and doesn't get her then, but he fulfills the deal and he wins where Orpheus didn't. Like, we know this person's story, we're telling it, and because you know it, you can do what they did well. You can avoid their mistakes, and maybe you will get farther. Maybe you'll succeed where they didn't quite make it. Yeah, it's all about being the next generation. It's not making the same mistakes our parents did. Well, we'll make brand new mistakes. A whole new kind. All right. I think that's just a perfect place to wrap it up. Dylan, did either of you have any more thoughts you wanted to share before we? No, I think we got to discuss this a lot. I'm just gonna go back and listen to more Hadestown. Like, oh boy, howdy! If there's a great cover of the song We Build the Wall on Philosophy Tube. Like, if listeners haven't checked that out, definitely go listen to it, because that song is just, whew, it hits hard.
Nice. I will probably, send me a link to that. I'll put it in the show notes so people can hear it.
Yep. Sounds good.
So before we all depart for our own quests, let's swing by the big house. Dylan, is there anything you wanted to plug?
Nothing really for me to plug in terms of shows and stuff. Again, I'm allegedly a comedian. Not doing any live.
Haven't seen him in a year or so, you know.
Yep, not doing any live performances right now. At time of recording, Texas is having a really rough time, so I would just use my shout out to be like, donate to a mutual aid fund if you can, or find something in your local community, because it's rough everywhere right now.
Yeah.
We all need to kind of band together if we're going to make it through this.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And we're getting really close to the end of the tunnel. We can't stop and look back before we actually succeed. So y'all keep wearing your masks, keep social distancing. If you can get the vaccine, get it. And when you do, keep wearing your masks and keep social distancing, because it's not over yet. Don't be like Orpheus.
Don't feel like Orpheus.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dylan, for joining us. This has been just the most fun and
I had a good time.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
And thank you again, listeners, for joining us to another episode. We look forward to coming back in 2 weeks and doing it again.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
And until next time, don't be like Zeus.
Don't be like Zeus.
Podcast of Poseidon is created, produced, and hosted by Darien and DJ Smartt. It's edited by Darien Smartt.
Our music is Athens Festival by Martin Hain. And our cover art is by Audrey Miller. You can find her on Instagram at bombshellnutshellart.
Like the show? Ready for more? Support Podcast of Poseidon on Patreon. Just $1 gets you exclusive bonus content. Find out more at patreon.com/podcastofposeidon.
Come hang out with us on Twitter or Instagram at Podcast of Poseidon. You can also find all of our episodes and episode transcripts at podcastofposeidon.com.
Thanks for listening.